Hot Rod Association drag racing, no man has picked his spots better than the Red Menace of Pro Modified, Fred Hahn. In one of only 2 races this year, Hahn beat the legend Ronnie Sox at the Eastern Nitrous Nationals. New York International Raceway is Hahn's home track. Last year, he beat Scotty Cannon's Wild Wheel-Hopping Willies in a final that had the home fans on their feet into the night. This year, Cannon will be gunning for revenge. He comes to New York as the class points leader off a win in the Gateway Nationals in St. Louis. Alcohol Funny Cars will feature defending world champion Mark Thomas, who survived this 200-mile-an-hour moment against Larry Dobbs at last year's Empire Nationals.
Left the starting line good, pulled second gear. I looked out the side window a little bit. I saw Larry coming my way, and I started to turn away, and that quick, I felt a tug. The car moved around a little bit, and it was one of those things, you had to make a decision instantly. Do I throw the chutes out in case we go on our heads, or do we keep going in case he's behind me to keep from getting hit? I chose the latter. We stayed in it, went 622, I think 220, and won the race. And as far as I was concerned, it worked out great because it was a neat run, and we still won.
Top Fuel will certainly feature a change in class leadership as 2-time world champion Gene Snow takes center stage. He'll have competition from sub-5-second performer Eddie the Thrill Hill and from 1989 champion Pat Dakin, the comeback driver of the year. In Pro Stock, the ultimate technician, Ricky Smith, is leaving no detail unchecked in defense of his points lead. At stake, a possible 6th pro title, something no one in the sport has ever done. ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. New York International Raceway Park, one of the longest, smoothest, and quickest drag strips in all of motorsports, presents the IHRA Costiassi Spumati Empire Nationals. Hello once again, everyone. I'm Bob Barsha, along with ESPN drag racing analyst Ted Jones. Welcome to upstate New York. Like other forms of motor racing, drag racing is subject to quirks in the weather, and we have a chance of thunder showers throughout the weekend. On this northernmost stop on the IHRA Trail in 1991, we've got some great title fights shaping up.
Oh, indeed we do, Bob. The points are very, very tight in Top Fuel, in Pro Stock especially, with Ricky Smith taking the upset win at St. Louis over Floyd Cheek. But at this track, it could be a different outcome. In Pro Modified, Scotty Cannon enjoys the most comfortable lead of any of the pros with his OnSat 40 Willys Chevrolet. I don't know who can stop him. We'll find out probably this weekend.
And we've got 15 wild pro mods that'll try to run him down. Right now, let's get down to top end and see who's done best thus far with Brett Kepner.
Well, gentlemen, you're absolutely right. It was 1 year ago at IHRA Racing that we thought we were seeing the closest points wars ever in our professional categories. But 1991's racing seems to make last year look weak. We've got a couple of points battles, not the least of which is Pro Alcohol Funny Car, that is separated by mere qualifying positions, let alone round wins. And, Bob, like you said, there is a chance of rain. But one thing's for sure, it's cooler right now than it's been at any race since the Winter Nationals. It has changed so drastically since we ran qualifying. As a matter of fact, down about 25 degrees, that most drivers admit that going into today's race, they don't have any idea how to set up the cars. It's like a whole new ball game. And that in itself may make for some serious upsets. Back to you, gentlemen.
No question about it, Brett. Temperature and humidity, the 2 numbers that the engine tuners will be watching most closely. Our ESPN coverage of the Tosti Empire Nationals is brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by GMC Truck. It's not just a truck anymore, it's quality on the road. After this quick timeout, we'll be back for the fastest cars of all, the floppers of Top Fuel. Quarterfinal action coming your way next.
There's a new sound in the IHRA Top Fuel pit area, the sound of silence. There's no question that right now, in the summer of 1991, drag racing is at a crossroads, at least in the Top Fuel division. A very simple reason is caused, one of the most unusual phenomena we've ever had to deal with in this sport. And that particular reason is simple. There isn't too much nitromethane to be had. Only 2.5 months ago in Sterlington, Louisiana, the Angus chemical plant that manufactured the vast majority of nitromethane for drag racing use exploded and burned at a tremendous cost of both property and lives. Right now, the biggest problem facing the sport of drag racing is the lack of availability since that plant obviously has ceased operation. The situation is so critical, the drivers themselves have banded together in an attempt to preserve what little nitromethane remains.
There's not a whole lot of nitro to go around, and as you know, supply versus demand, the prices are going to go up, I would imagine. We're all going to have to conserve fuel a little bit. We're talking about maybe running fewer time trials if it comes to that, maybe pooling the nitro that's left and let the teams that are still in competition draw from the teams that go out early and things like that. We're all going to try to start warming up on alcohol to conserve fuel as much as possible, so it is a problem.
Believe it or not, I'd probably quit if I had to quit running my nitro motor, but I think we need to be conservative is what we need to do. We need to warm up on alcohol, maybe cut down a qualifying run or two, just be real careful with it, and we can probably reduce it 30 or 40%.
There's another fuel called nitroethane that we use a little bit of once in a while for testing and stuff. It's like 70% nitro, so we'd have to run it with something or go back to a two-speed transmission. It would slow the cars down some, but you still have the noise and the excitement.
The top fuel category has been hit hard, and hit hard in several respects, probably the most obvious of which is a dwindling number of entries in any sanctioning body's event so far. And that appears to be a continuing trend, especially with the independent teams, as they find it harder and harder just to get fuel. The biggest problem may happen if the Angus Chemical Plant achieves its full production capabilities next year when it's rebuilt. Will the cost be prohibitive, even when there is enough nitromethane to field a top fuel dragster? The Kugel Racing Fuels team has plenty to say about that. Is this going to get much more out of hand than it is?
On our standpoint, we're still charging what we charged last year and all this season.
And Larry Kugel actually brought up the fact that he wants to keep that price the same even if the plant reaches productivity again?
Right. Our price might be a little bit higher, but, we're going to try to keep our price as low as possible so the racers can enjoy racing.
But in this situation, even though you're out to help the racer, can you see this coming into a situation where it's just going to be cost prohibitive from anybody's standpoint?
No.
As an example of how much the Kugel Racing Fuels guys are trying to keep things equal within the competitors in Top Fuel, this was the last drum of nitro they had for the Empire Nationals, and there were two Top Fuel dragster teams that needed fuel. So how did they handle it? They split it in half. Each team got 26 gallons, no arguments, no problems. Right now, though, the biggest question is whether or not the cost-prohibitive situation will affect the sport in the coming years. Let's face it, drag racing is about nitro cars, and right now, nitro cars may be becoming an endangered species.
Thank you, Brett. That is a significant problem when you consider that these cars go through about 12 gallons of fuel in each 5-second run. In Top Fuel quarterfinals, our first matchup will be Jack Ostrander out of Pontiac, Michigan. Pontiac Jack going up against Wayne Bailey, whom we just heard from. Wayne out of Lake Orion, Michigan.
Well, this is the middle of the field right here. The number 4 and 5 qualifiers meeting up, so pretty equal competition.
Keep in mind, the temperatures are very, very cool, and that certainly helps these engines. The two cars between them producing something on the order of 9,000 horsepower. A good look there into the eyes of one of the elder statesmen in Top Fuel, Jack Ostrander. There is Wayne Bailey using some of the new sunglasses that came into the sport last year. That to provide the drivers with a little less glare off the racetrack in the front of the car. Good lead for both cars. Now Bailey smokes the tires right off the concrete pad.
It'll be an easy win for Jack Ostrander with a 5:33 at 267 miles per hour, thanks to the smoking tires of Wayne Bailey coming off the pad right there.
Bailey was among the Top Fuel drivers who was concerned about the length of the concrete pad here. These cars are now 300 inches in wheelbase, and some of them were hanging off the back of the concrete pad. Here is Fred Farndon from Columbus, Ohio. He will be going up against this man, the 1989 class champion from Dayton, Ohio, Pat Dakin.
Well, Pat Dakin and partner G.L. Rupp have always been a tough contender on the IHRA circuit. They kind of laid off the circuit last year, but they're back this year. It looks like stronger than ever, Bob.
Pat Dakin could be one of the big spoilers in competition this year. He's run only a couple of races as you take a close look there at Fred Farndon.
This is a relatively new car for Freddie Farndon, at least new to him. It's Jim Head's old Top Fuel car out of Columbus, Ohio. Freddie's hometown also.
You saw Dakin there wearing the extra collar underneath the helmet. Tremendous G-forces built up by these cars. Good launch for Farndon in the left lane, but he gets sideways, and he can't save it.
Over Farndon goes. He rolls about once and stops. He's staying on his side. That's a good sign. Good chance the roll cage may protect him. The safety crew's rolling now.
The first thing we worry about is fire. There appears to be none. You see Farndon moving about in the roll cage, and that's a good sign, too. Boy, you can't watch a top fuel car roll like that without remembering the crash 2 years ago that crippled a great young drag racer, Darrell Gwynn. But Farndon appears to be up and out and okay.
The roll cage did its job and protected Farndon, as did the neck collar and the arm restraints you see hanging from his wrist right there. That's one of the things he was unbuckling when the safety crew arrived on the scene.
Those restraints used to keep the driver's arms inside that protective roll cage.
Farndon sitting right on the finish line. As a matter of fact, we have an ET, Bob, on Farndon, 18.52 seconds. That indicates that the car did actually cross the finish line lights.
And it's a run Fred Farndon's going to remember for a long time. Let's take another look in the left lane as things get out of control.
Farndon is about the 660 or 700 foot mark when suddenly the car veers off over into the other lane, and then on its side, watch it skidding on its side, turns around 360 degrees, comes back upright, now over on the opposite side, still skidding down the track, and finally stops just at the finish line.
We talked about the stresses built up on the drivers with these 300-inch wheelbase cars. You can imagine the stresses at either end of this frame. You see Fred Farndon roll to a stop right on the finish line. Top fuel cars are a handful. Just witness the tribulations of former funny car greats Don Prudhomme and Kenny Bernstein. Fred Farndon is out, and he is apparently okay. Brett Kepner is with him.
Fred, on the second run on a brand-new car, it has got to be the most horrendous experience you've had in years and years. They say something may have come off the car. What did you feel?
I don't know. The back end just started to come around, and I turned the wheels, and it wouldn't correct, and it was just all over. I mean, I was trying to steer. Those little front wheels just don't steer, you know.
It's the first car you've ever had with them.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. First car. That's the first time I crashed in 30 years, so it happens fast. I just couldn't get with it.
You had some problems with the car in qualifying. You wanted to move around a lot.
We put 37 pounds of lead on the front, try to calm it down, but it didn't. There's something I didn't get right in the car, I guess. Good car, it stayed together.
Well, this is a car that has a lot of design from Jim Head, and he's always concerned about safety.
Yeah, right. Well, Gaddy built the car. It's a Gaddy car. It hauled up, did its job. I mean, other than being sore, I'm okay.
You were out of there quick, and the car doesn't look that bad, to be honest with you.
Looks bad to me.
Glad to see you're okay, guy.
Thanks.
Well, I'll bet it looks bad when you consider all the time and loving care that goes into these cars. By the way, Pat Dakin ran a 5.286 at 232 miles an hour against Fred Farndon. That will give him lane choice against Eddie Hill, who beat Bob Simmons in the other quarterfinal matchup. Gene Snow had a bye, but his run of 5.202 will give him lane choice against Jack Ostrander. With that, we'll all take a deep breath and come back for quarterfinal action among the gas-burning 2-4-barrel carbureted door slammers of Pro Stock. Welcome back to a cool Sunday afternoon at New York International Raceway Park, where we pick up the action with quarterfinals of Pro Stock. Just got a look at Floyd Cheek moving into position. Here is Harold Denton.
Harold Denton in the famous Party Time Pontiac, still owned by the Ruth brothers up in Kentucky, and he's going against Floyd Cheek, who is kind of the upset kid on the trail this year, Bob. The new kid on the block out of Chattanooga.
Denton, the number 4 qualifier. Cheek, the number 5, so this is an appropriate matchup for the second round. Denton knocked off Ed Dixon in the first round. Floyd Cheek got by Charlie Garrett. Good start in the near lane for Cheek, who has a huge hole shot over Harold Denton. You don't often see that. He holds it to the end.
And an easy win for Floyd Cheek with a 7:22 to Denton's quicker 7:15. Boy, talk about a hole shot. Watch this lead by Floyd Cheek, a 0.27 reaction time, and he called Harold asleep. Harold with a 2:09.
You just said it felt like a hole shot. How about a 7:22 to a losing 7:15 for Harold Denton?
Yeah, I thought it was a real good shot out of the hole. I felt like I just cut it to the closest you can cut it.
It was about an 1800th hole shot. It was a huge one.
Whew, that was good.
Now here's one of the young superstars in Pro Stock, Steve Williford. who will be going up against Billy Huff. A bit of a surprise here. Huff, the number 3 qualifier out of Shepherdsville, Kentucky. Williford out of Engelhard, North Carolina, number 6.
Well, Huff was really tough in IHRA's old super modified category, so it's not really that surprising that he would advance up in pro stock.
Huff gets the advantage off the starting line. Can Williford come on and get him? Yes!
Steve Williford with a 722, 191 miles per hour to pick up the victory. Looking at it one more time, you'll see it's horsepower time for Steve Williford with that big 747 cubic inch Pontiac.
And now we'll get our first look at the 5-time Pro Stock World Champion, Ricky Smith from King, North Carolina. He is really on a roll. He won the last event in St. Louis. He comes in as number 1 qualifier, but his opponent, no day at the beach, Billy Ewing out of Snellville, Georgia.
Ricky qualified number 1 with a 7:17, then dropped Jim Rivas in the first round with an impressive 7.12. He's knocking on the door of the 7-0.
His reaction time in that first round, 0.9 seconds, and he got another great start. Ewing's going to have to pedal hard to catch up. He won't do it.
Ricky Smith pulls it out with a 7:17, 193 miles per hour. The reaction time, a 0.62. He's tough again and wired to that tree.
And in addition to having a quick right foot, Ricky Smith also puts together a great race car.
I'll tell you, it's turning into an interesting situation. Terry Adams red lighted away a 7:13. They're ahead of you. Now that he's out, Doug Kirk can move past second and start to threaten you.
Yeah, it's going to be a battle, you know. We just got to go up here and see if we can win the next round and see what happens with Doug, you know. Right now, I'm just worried about Ricky Smith winning some races. You know, the points we'll worry about the last 2 races.
It's an interesting philosophy, but right now Ricky Smith is leading the points and this race.
Thank you a lot.
And by virtue of his quicker ET, Ricky Smith will have lane choice against Floyd Cheek. As Brett mentioned, Terry Adams red-lighted, so Doug Kirk will have lane choice against Steve Williford in the semifinals. Up next, the nitrous belting Pro Modifieds when we return to upstate New York. Stay right there. At the Tostiasti Spumati Empire Nationals. Bob Barsha and Ted Jones with you as we get to the quarterfinal action in Pro Modified. We said it would be wild, and it has been. Take a look at Gary Grainer from nearby Elma, New York, and take a look at what he did in the first round to the hottest car in the class, points leader Scotty Cannon. Grainer upset Cannon, and the points leader, along with the next 4 men in the championship standings, are out of the competition after 1 round. You saw the numbers there, Ted. It was legitimate.
And Grainer did it legitimately with a 7:15. Now here he goes against Joe Anderson from Leominster, New York, and he cranks off a 7:06, 197 miles per hour. This guy is hot.
Now there is NBA superstar Larry Nance of the Cleveland Cavaliers. They'll be big favorites when we go to Norwalk, Ohio later this year. He brings his man Pat Moore into line, venting the nitrous oxide gas used by these cars to boost horsepower. Pat Moore's opponent will be Jim Halsey. Halsey from Street, Maryland, who knocked off Killer Brooks in the first round.
Halsey with a relatively small engine for this class, 622 cubic inches. Pat Moore sporting 698 cubic inches. Moore, no newcomer to strong competition, is a former world champion in Top Sportsman.
There you see Halsey at work inside the cockpit of a car that once belonged to Mike Ashley, one of the original superstars of Pro Modified. Halsey with a great hole shot. Moore is lost at the starting line.
Both of them with problems. Halsey wins, but with a 697. Pat Moore, a 736. Not a bad performance. And Larry Nance, although he doesn't want to lose, does not look that upset.
Now here's our first look at the big crowd favorite here, the defending champion, Fred Hahn from nearby West Seneca, New York, using one of the smallest engines in the class, 526 cubic inches.
Well, that's the cubic inch limit that the blown cars are limited to because they do use a supercharger, whereas a car like this, Manny DeJesus's nitrous-injected car, can run 710 cubic inches.
Manny DeJesus from the motorsport capital of New York City, believe it or not.
DeJesus with a 69 Chevy Nova, one of the all-time favorite nostalgia cars.
This is a great confrontation between two very different approaches to Pro Modified. Just listen to the whine of Freddie Hahn's supercharged engine. Hahn lifts early, goes 696 at only 190. He was off of that car early. Oh, there's a lot more in it from Freddie Hahn, who will have lane choice against Gary Grainer in the semifinals. Al Billis will give up lane choice to Jim Halsey. Now here's Brett.
Well, gentlemen, one thing that's amazing about the race fans here at the Empire Nationals every year is the fact that these people love the outdoors. And here in what they call Tornado Town, it's nothing but RVs for miles. You can get anything you want down here. Lots of good food. Smells great. That one needs turning there. Can cruise on down the line, get just about anything you need. Everybody here has got an RV or a camper of some kind watching the races right up here. And track owner Bob Metcalf only charges $50 a parking spot for the whole weekend. Play dominoes with the kids. Stop by here, get a nice cold drink, or a couple of dozen of them, actually. These people definitely like to have fun, but one thing's for sure, they know how to get on TV, too.
Absolutely, Brett. They know who they're dealing with here. We'll be back for quarterfinal action among the floppers of Alcohol Funny Car when we return to New York International Raceway. Stay with us. Now, here's something you don't see every day, music to watch drag racing by. I tell you what, the guy wouldn't be blowing so hard back in qualifying when it was about 95 degrees here at New York International Raceway Park. We're ready for quarterfinal action in Alcohol Funny Cars. You saw Doug Hearsom. Here is Larry Dobbs, the overall class points leader, for whom this is one very critical race.
This is our race to really do it and get that points lead back in good shape. And as you know, we left the track yesterday. We missed the last round to go and get a new set of tires for it. It's got a new blower on it for today, and today's the day to go for it.
He's going to go for it in an all-Canadian quarterfinal matchup. From Welland, Ontario, Larry Dobbs, the points leader. From Lisle, Ontario, Doug Hearsom. Dobbs the last of stage, and Hearsom left him at the tree. We'll see if Dobbs can come back and drive around. No! It's going to be Doug Hearsom. So close he wins it with a 634, 218 miles per hour, a 185 reaction time, and that's the story. Dobbs had a 202 reaction with a quicker 633 ET. Look at them as they come up on the finish line now. You can throw a blanket over the both of them. Less than 1 foot difference in this drag race.
Listen to this, 634 to a losing 633.
Right on. We've been struggling all weekend. We got a brand new motor in the car, a brand new fuel system, had some oil leaks, oil getting on the clutch and stuff. I'm happy. My sponsor's here, my wife's here. Right on.
Now, there's something else that's going on here that you may have forgotten. The winner of that race has a bye into the final, buddy.
Oh, we'll take it. Just like Mark Thomas says, we'll take it. And whoever wins, no problem. Me and Mark are good buddies, but I just hope it's us.
Well, we'll see if it will be Mark Thomas. He is in the near lane going up against Walt Prismal from Buffalo, New York.
Well, Thomas, the defending world champion in that Dodge Daytona, a big 526 cubic inch 80 engine.
Prismal in the far lane gets way out of shape off the launch pad. Mark Thomas will have an easy run.
Thomas with a 627, 225 miles per hour. That car can move on top end.
We'll take another look at it. Mark Thomas, as you mentioned, Ted, must have more in this car. Straight as an arrow, right down to a great 627.
627 again, this time at 225. But you can thank Doug Hearsom for moving you into the points lead. That win just gave it to you.
Good deal. Did Doug win?
Doug won.
I wasn't fine.
Whole shot.
Good deal. We were hoping that would happen. I mean, I like to race Larry. I like to race Doug. I mean, I feel good about this race. We changed the clutch a little bit. It shook the tires real hard anyhow. We're going to go back and go the other way. I know this car run the teams here. We did last year. The track's excellent. The air is good. We want to go faster.
Spoken like a true racer, Mark Thomas will have lane choice against Tony Bogelow in the next round. Bogelow advancing when Jerry Dornicker broke at the start. Doug Hearsom has a bye run into the final, and with points leader Larry Dobbs out of the competition, this could really get interesting in Alcohol Funny Cars. Now it's time for Brett with the next edition of our Hot Rod Workshop.
On past past editions of Hot Rod Workshop, we've talked about the importance of a soft-treaded tire for both street and strip use, but we've had so many questions on different applications that we figured we'd better address them now. This is one of the M&H Racemaster treaded, street-legal, Department of Transportation approved tires that works best in a drag racing application. Now, as we've stated before, this is a very, very soft rubber compound. It's suitable for street use, but not for very long, and you will go through them quick on the street. Well, one of the big concerns of our viewers has been tire pressure. At the drag strip, yes, most of these tires work best at a lower pressure than what you would utilize for a street tire. This particular edition on Laverne Eberst's Pure Stock Dodge Demon usually runs between a high of 22 pounds and a low of 16 pounds, about an average of 18 or so at the drag strip. But with some of the softer rubber performance, especially the wide-profile street tires, it's been proven in tests that the tires actually work better on the street at a higher pressure than you would think. Most of the time, lower pressure means better working tires for the traction aspect of a hard launch or a drag racing run. But with these particular tires and a lot of the wide-profile street tires, the sidewall strength is not enough to accept much more than a low air pressure reading of about 16 pounds. But on the street, the actual air pressure itself will help increase the rigidity of the tire. It's always important, of course, to check what the manufacturer itself suggests. And there's another thing you need to keep in mind at a drag strip when it comes to tires. When you're racing in competition, or for that matter, to a certain degree, when you're on the street with your car, you want to make sure that the air pressure is the same in both rear tires and, for that matter, both front tires. But remember this, when the car is sitting with extended periods of sunlight shining only on one side of the car, the tire pressure in that tire is going to increase. Why? Because the heat is going to make the oxygen in the tire expand. These tire covers are in common use in the staging lanes at any racetrack. When a driver has to sit in the lanes waiting for his next round and the sun's on one side, he'll just cover it up. Make sure that in the shade, it's pretty much the same as the shaded side of the car. There's a big difference in adhesion when one tire suddenly develops 5 or 6 more pounds of air pressure than the other. Something to keep in mind. Consistency, and it could save you some money. That's this week's Hot Rod Workshop.
All right, thank you, Brett. We go from pure stock to pure fire. Top Fuel semifinals coming up next. Cool day at New York's International Raceway Park. Here comes Eddie the Thrill Hill out of Wichita Falls, Texas. One of the first men to crack the 5-second barrier in Top Fuel competition. And here is Pat Dakin, the 1989 IHRA World Champion, on a comeback run after a year away from the sport, and he is really running well.
What a battle this is. The number 2 qualifier, Patty Dakin, against the number 3 qualifier, Eddie the Thrill.
In all honesty, Eddie Hill is not having the season that he would have liked to have in 1991. He's got a lot of mechanical problems. There you see the crew working on Pat Dakin's machine.
Eddie Hill only turned a 598 in the most previous round. However, he didn't have to run hard against Bob Simmons, who only ran a 697, so that may not be an indication of what the car can do.
I mentioned Eddie Hill not having a great season. I'll bet he's one of the last guys Pat Dakin wanted to go in against, though. Wife Ersie Hill directs Eddie to the staging lane. Notice the front end of the car. Dakin with the big old bicycle wheel style front end. Eddie Hill smoking the tires off the launch pad with that new aerodynamic front end, and Dakin wins it.
Dakin with a 526, 273 miles per hour. But listen to this. Hill with a 523, actually quicker, but had a reaction time of 203, which is very slow. Dakin's reaction, 115.
The most interesting aspect of this race is even though it was 0.03 of a second hole shot shown in the elapsed times, there was still 0.05 between you at the finish line. You were way out on Eddie.
I didn't, from about half track on. This thing really is starting to produce a lot of horsepower there. I don't know how fast it went.
273.
Well, that's off for this car. It's been consistent 280s. But really, Gary has this thing making a ton of horsepower on the other end, and it's starting to show, and it's starting to really open people up when you get at half track.
Just trying to remember, it's been almost 2 years now since we've seen you in a final round.
Well, get used to it. We're going to be back.
You bet he'll be back. Now here is the man he may well have to face. Gene Snow, the 2-time IHRA World Champion. When Pat Dakin says they're making a lot more horsepower, as you take a look there at Jack Ostrander, Snow's opponent, these cars could make well over 5,000 horses. The problem the crew chiefs face is getting all the horsepower to the ground. In
indeed it is, Bob. The idea is to set those slider clutches exactly perfect, and that's tough with 2- and 3-stage clutches now.
There you see Ostrander backing in. Good look at the tall wings that may be old technology in the top fuel cars of the future. Some of the teams experimenting with special aerodynamic packages that allow them to use a lower rear wing and avoid the much dreaded blowover effect when the front wheels just come right up over the ground and flip you right over backwards. Gene Snow working on those arm restraints that saved Freddie Farndon in that big crash in the first round.
Snow qualified number 1 with a 5.18, then had a bye run in the first round, but he stood on it anyway and went a 5.20 to get lane choice.
Watch the eyes of Jack Ostrander. We'll follow him all the way through the start. Good launch for both cars. Gene Snow gets the car length right off the pad, though, and holds it to the end.
Snow with the win at a 5.11, 272, but Ostrander in losing sets a new track speed record, 277.19 miles per hour.
Here's another look at it. Ostrander getting way over on the left side of the lane as Snow cruises to the win.
You just gave the New York fans a drag race. 5.113, new track record for you. Ostrander tried to run you down, ran a 23, but a 277 track speed record, loser.
Well, I tell you, this racetrack's coming around. We like to race on these cool days, I tell you.
This is the first time the sun's broken through right as you stopped. Is that going to change things, do you think?
No, I don't think it has time for the next round, and it'll be setting a little bit. I tell you, 11 is great. There's a possibility of an O here.
That's unbelievable, but only you. Remember 12 last year.
Right, so we got last year. Now we got to do a little better.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Oh, this should be a great final. Gene Snow will have lane choice against Pat Dakin using some of the last drops of nitro to be found at the racetrack. Now let's move on to semifinal action in pro stock. And in one half of the brackets, we saw a very unusual occurrence. There is Steve Williford. He went in against Doug Kirk, a title contender. And we had a double red light, Ted.
Actually, both these guys red light, but the computer will only accept the worst or the first red light, and that's Williford with a -362. Raised it right up out of the lights just like he did at Bristol earlier in the year.
So as Williford deals with the problems of gauging the starting light, we'll move on to what should be a great matchup. Floyd Cheek right there going up against Ricky Smith in a rematch of our final at the Gateway Nationals in St. Louis just a few weeks ago.
Well, you can bet Ricky wants sweet revenge, and he's got it right there with the red light start.
Floyd Cheek took a shot at the tree and missed. So the guy in the near lane in the STP Pontiac, Ricky Smith, has a great run and moves on to the final.
720, he's hot.
In fact, Ricky Smith 720 will give him lane choice against Doug Kirk as we go to the final in pro stock.
At the rear of every pro stock and pro modified machine in competition are a pair of brightly painted wheels. The wheelie bar wheels are used to determine exactly how the chassis is reacting off the starting line. And very simply, just get a nice little cheap bottle of white shoe polish, paint the tires. And when the car leaves the starting line, they'll leave 2 white marks down the concrete launch pad to tell you exactly how much torque is being applied, where it's being applied, and whether or not the car is working effectively off the starting line. It's just one more way to figure out what's going on without a $50,000 computer.
Thank you, Brett. We'll be back with semifinal action in Pro Modified and Alcohol Funny Car when we return to the Tosti Empire Nationals. Back at Leicester, New York at the Tosti Spumati Empire Nationals. Semifinal action now in Pro Modified. You saw Al Billis, already a winner once this year. His opponent, Jim Halsey.
Well, you've got to bet, although Halsey is from nearby Maryland, Al Billis from Ontario, Canada, has to be the #1 favorite here because the Canadians come across the border. We're so close to the border.
Al Billis, the #2 qualifier. Jim Halsey, #3. He knocked off Killer Brooks and then Pat Moore. Al Billis got here beating Gordy Meal and then Tim McCamus. So both of these guys really deserve to be here. There have been no walkovers in Pro Modified. Good launch for both cars.
Al Billis pulls it out with an impressive 698, 198 miles per hour. The Canadian is hauling.
And he had to. Right there at the finish at an even 7-0 with Halsey.
From dark clouds to bright sunshine in just about every respect. You know the Canadian fans are loving it. You're in the final, 698 again. You got it back. You went a 703, and you had a little bit of a hole shot.
I went a 703?
No, you went the 698. He went the 03.
Okay. Good, yeah. No, we hopped it up to the pattern we had in it last night, and it seems to have held it. And, great, final round. This is good. Canadian fans, you know, I really like that.
You know what's going to be really wild is it's going to be a Canadian against one of the two hometown boys who are up next. So this will be an interesting crowd race.
I was kind of hoping for this all day. I figured it'd be fun. I hope I beat him.
We'll see.
But he's tough. He's good.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves there, Al. Are you figuring Freddie Hahn has got to walk over to the final here? He does not. He's going up against the Cinderella story of this event, Gary Grainer.
Grainer, who qualified number 13, keeps running faster. He ran a 7:15, then pumped out a 7:06. He's finding ET every round in this car, and you can bet that Jim Audie, who tunes that car, knows it.
With a 7:06 and a 6:96, Fred Hahn is just one round ahead of Grainer. And Grainer doesn't leave the starting line. Now he leaves, but it's way too late.
Grainer was some sort of difficulty, but it may not have been mechanical. Freddie Hahn, a 698. No, Grainer didn't have mechanical problems, Bob. He ran a 7 flat at 197. Let's look one more time here. Grainer setting there. Now, finally, he leads.
We need one more round.
That's true, and I told you the good news. Here's the bad news. You went 698.6. Al Billis went 698.4, so you lost lane choice.
That's okay.
No problem?
I think the lanes are pretty equal. I don't think that's a problem.
You know the crowd's going to love it. The hometown boy, and then one for the Canadian fans?
Right. This will be the Can-Am Challenge, right, Al?
All right, we now understand that Gary Grainer's problem was he staged too deeply and couldn't see the starting lights over that big hood scoop. So Hahn will meet Billis in the final. And we move on to alcohol funny cars. There is Mark Thomas, the defending world champion, with two sub-6.3-second runs coming into this matchup with Tony Bogolo.
Bogolo didn't run that well most previous round at all. He ran a 777, but in the first round, Bogolo cranked out a 639.
In fairness to Tony, his opponent, Jerry Dornicker, broke in the previous round, so this could be a very interesting matchup. As is usual in alcohol funny cars, both drivers taking lots of time after those long, smoky burnouts. The alcohol funny cars run much cooler than the nitro-powered machines, so they can do that.
Well, as a matter of fact, they do that intentionally. The idea is to build up some heat in the engine because it makes more horsepower with the alcohol funny car.
The temperature between 65 and 70 right now. And that will make the job a little bit more difficult in building up that heat. Now Tony Bogolo, in imagination, pulls up to the staging lights. In the near lane, Mark Thomas running ethanol alcohol in his machine. Good launch for both cars. Both guys get a little squirrely off the launch pad, and Bogolo has to get out of it.
Thomas with an easy win, a 631, 223 miles per hour.
That'll certainly give Doug Hearsum something to think about. You see Tony Bogolo lifting there in order to save the engine.
We went out and shook the tires hard, and the track's changing drastically from the heat coming out now. And we've been changing the clutch around, trying to figure out what it was.
Well, if you're still shaking, you're still going to have to ask it.
Yeah, we're going to go out and give it some more and change the clutch a little bit and look at the fuel system and what's going on and see what Doug runs here, and we'll be ready for the final. We know we can run a team. We just got to put it on the track.
Hearsum could be tough, and he's got the Canadians on his side, too.
Doug's good, real good. It'll be a good final.
Well, Doug Hearsum gave no indication of what cards he holds. In his other semifinal run against no opposition, he came through at a pedestrian 93 miles an hour, 9.09 seconds. That gives Mark Thomas lane choice over Hearsum, but there may be a problem. Back down to Brett.
Here, everything looked good, and now you look under the car. What's the problem?
Rear end's busted right where the floater bolts on, where the brake caliper bolts onto the car, onto the rear end housing. It's busted right in half.
From the shake?
It shook hard. When I grabbed the brakes at the end, they went right down. I was hoping maybe a master cylinder or just the caliper went bad, but it busted and pulled the line right off when it took the caliper right around and brake with it.
It's not anything you can fix?
No, not unless we get a rear end, but we don't have any spare rear ends.
That's unbelievable.
Not good. Not good at all.
It's a tough break.
Not the way we like to go out either.
Well, let's take one more look at that Mark Thomas run and see if we can see when he actually brakes due to the tire shake. You can't actually see the damage, but it cost him the race.
He says it broke the rear end out of the car, and if so, and they can't fix it, that means you are the winner, buddy.
Wow. What a way to win. But like my buddy Mark says, I'll take it.
You bet he'll take it. In his first funny car final, Doug hears from the winner. He met only 2 opponents in 4 rounds, but he beat the class points leader, so he earned it. Back at the Tasciassi Spumani Empire Nationals, we're ready for the Top Fuel Final. There is the 1987 and 88 IHRA World Champion, Gene Snow, the snowman from Fort Worth, Texas, going up against the 1989 champion from Dayton, Ohio, at Dakin. Interesting contrast in styles there on the burnout, Ted. Dakin with a very short hop, whereas Snowman killed mosquitoes all the way down to the 60-foot marker.
Well, it's different psychology by each driver. Snow wants to get those tires super, super hot, so you really burn them hard, whereas Dakin just spins them over, putting a little bit of heat into it. Just a difference in the way you want to think about how to get the tires ready to make this run.
There you see the incredible plumbing on the contemporary Top Fuel car. Gene Snow getting a lot of fuel out of those exhaust headers. That's what makes the smoke when the engine is burning very richly, actually spewing out the fuel that cannot burn in the combustion chamber. And Snow with a problem right off the pad.
Snow actually shut it down. Some sort of problem. Pat Dakin wins with a 528, 271 miles per hour. Let's look one more time and see if we can see what sort of problem Snow had. He just went up in smoke as he came off the pad and shut it down.
I'll tell you, I know there was probably a lot of people thinking this was going to be the snowman's day again, but a lot of tire smoke up there for him. 528, 271. Consistency again from Rupp and Dakin.
Well, like I said before, time before Gary's got this car down, we didn't try to get ahead of our game. We just had a game plan. We stuck to it, and we're consistent, and we hoped that Gene was going to get a little too aggressive, and he did, but son of a gun, we won another one. I think we're back.
I think they are. With that, Pat Dakin has split his 10 career final round appearances, 5 wins, 5 losses. We move on now to Pro Stock. There you see Ricky Smith opening the door to get some of that tire smoke out of the cockpit. His opponent, Doug Kirk, who missed out on the Pro Stock Championship last year by just 25 points to Tommy Mooney. There you see second-generation racer from Kermit, West Virginia.
Well, Ricky's been running plenty strong. Tricky Ricky turned in a 720, a 717, a 712, Bob, in the first round, and he qualified number 1 with a 717.
Ricky Smith, the quickest car in Pro Stock history at 7.08 seconds. But he's going to have his hands full against this guy. Doug Kirk is on a march this year as well.
Remember, Ricky's been cutting 0 reaction times all day long.
Kirk with the advantage at half track. And wins.
Doug Kirk pulls it out with a hole shot. He turns a 723, 192 mile per hour. The crew is elated. Ricky Smith turned a quicker 721, but had a 105 reaction. Kirk with a 066 reaction, and that is the story. Look at Kirk barely pulling it out by less than a wheel size.
Is that great or what?
Huh? There's the Doug Kirk smile. Hey, you're going to like this if you didn't already hear. The hole shot was what did it? You outdrove Ricky Smith. 500th hole shot, 23 to a losing 21.
Well, it got into a bad tire shaking. I short shifted high gear, and I just hoped it went on, and it did, and it just really paid off.
I'll tell you what, we talked to Ricky earlier on 2 different occasions about the fact that with Adams going out and the points, you moving up from 3rd into 2nd and moving up on Ricky, this could turn into a real war, and now it's a 3-way.
Well, you know, Tim stayed home this weekend, and I wish he could be here, but he's still working on our first aluminum motor, and we're still racing with a steel one. And Frank, Steve, and Dad, and everybody's really worked hard. You know, we qualified number 10, didn't look too good, but everything come around today, first round, and we just kind of maintained everything. When the track got hot, everything got, you know, a little bad. We took some clutch out of it, I needed just a little bit more out of it, but I backpedaled in third gear, and I don't know what kind of light I had, but I'm glad I have one.
No kidding, you actually had to pedal the car?
I actually let off the third gear. I could show you on a computer tape where I actually let completely off the throttle one time.
That's incredible, but the starting line advantage, like I said, when you can get one on Ricky, you've gotten to the best.
You know, he's a true professional, you know, and when you have to go home on Monday and work every day, when you outrun him, you've done something.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Congratulations to Doug Kirk, and we will move on to Pro Modified. Talk about killing mosquitoes. Look at the cloud of tire smoke from Freddie Hahn.
Well, Freddie Hahn, the world beater, obviously this is his home track. He's in front of his hometown crowd, Bob. He needs to win right here. He did it last year, dusting off Scotty Cannon, and right now he needs to beat the Canadian. But there are some Canadian fans here who would like to see Al Billis win this thing.
There is Al Billis backing in that cloud of tire smoke. They call it the Can-Am Challenge. Freddie Hahn, in only his third appearance in 6 races this year. Al Billis has been to all of them, and he won the Dixie Nitrous Nationals already this year.
Freddie Hahn has won this year, but he won a lot last year and caused quite a controversy with the supercharged car. However, there aren't as many supercharged cars on the circuit this year as there were last year, Bob. So I really wonder if it's that big an advantage.
There you see Freddie Hahn pulling in. On the near side is the mirror that he has to use to see the lights over this enormous blower sitting atop that Chevrolet power plant.
As we look at Billis, he's running 632 cubic inches of nitrous oxide injected Chevy in that Camaro.
With a big cloud of exhaust, Hahn beaten off the line and beaten down the drag strip by Billis.
Hahn must have had a problem. Billis a 699, 197 miles per hour, and Hahn actually slowed to a 715 at 193. Let's watch that drag race one more time.
You can see the sun getting low, and it has warmed up a lot. This track has been catching competitors out all day, but Al Billis had it absolutely nailed. Here he is with Brett.
Wow. Incredible. Close to home, 2 this year after all these problems. Oh, well, I got to thank everybody involved in me that's helped me. And, geez, you guys have been good to me. Oh, that's incredible. You know, this is great.
It's good to see, like I said, for the Canadian fans, of which there are quite a few here.
Everybody's here. This is great.
Amazing job, but the biggest thing about this one was beating that red car.
Oh, he's awesome. I mean, those guys, they've got their act together. I was surprised they shook.
I'll tell you, the locals up there are stunned because there were a lot of people rooting for him, but I think this might also add a little fuel to the wing controversy, don't you?
There was a controversy? I missed that.
Great job.
Thanks a lot.
Well, our finals today are going to produce a big shakeup in the points, and we'll be back to sum them up. Way Park, where today's Tosti Asti Fumati Empire Nationals have had a big impact on the championship, Ted.
Well, Bob, indeed it has. In Top Fuel, Gene Snow moves into first place. Pat Dakin holds down second place, and Keen Kinney fell to third. In Pro Stocks, Ricky Smith is on top. Doug Kirk moved into second and bumped Terry Adams down to third place. In I'll Funny Car, Mark Thomas moved into third place. Larry Dobbs fell down to second place. Doug Hearsom in a distant third. And finally, in Pro Modified, Scotty Cannon with a 500-point commanding lead.
ESPN coverage of the Tosti Asti Fumati Empire Nationals have been brought to you by Budweiser, the king of beers. With that clean, crisp, cold taste, nothing beats a Bud. Our next